could easily just walk into this realm of colourful, semi-abstract things and be like, ugh, painting. But then if they see something like this, you know, it kind of looks like, wait, what? So I always wanted that, like, wait, what thing? I think a painting can look many different ways. And I have a pet peeve about when I see exhibitions when all the works are like the same size and the same subject, especially these days with that greedy market, because it just looks like product, right? I didn't succeed in using just black and white. So by the end, you know, there's a little ochre or a little bit of pink and red. But these were my attempts. And I was also experimenting with mixing up blacks of my own. Now, unfortunately, you can see there's some crazing and cracking. You might prefer these to some later works, but it is interesting how you see that I do technically improve over time. And in the early ones, you'll see I used to varnish everything. So I loved the shiny, complete look that the varnish gave, and that it made everything kind of uniform and gave some distance. And my reference was Francis Bacon putting glass over his paintings, because he always talked about that, having this distancing effect, right? And so I thought, even if I have these gnarly, unfashionable paintings, that the varnish at least gives them a little bit of, cools them down a bit. I always regretted calling them black paintings for a number of reasons, but one is that then people think I'm referring to Goya's black paintings. And there is a reference to Goya, but it's not to the black paintings, it's to The Sleep of Reason Produces Nightmares, which is that incredible etching with, you know, these bats and things above his head, and, you know, this idea of the horrors. But I wanted them to be able to be a horror and a comedy, and see so much joy. You know, there's nothing more cheering than looking at paintings, really, is there? Very freeing to do sort of different styles within one painting, and that happened again in Ladyland paintings, where you'd have one face that was very illustrational, one that was almost photographic, one that was very expressive, and that you could kind of give yourself permission to paint in all these different ways, because you were never saying, this is how to do a face. And my fear with these is that you're saying, this is how to do a face. And also humans always go straight to the face. I think probably animals do too, actually. People seem to want to locate the meaning of the painting in the face, which I've always found very frustrating, because the face, you know, you want to treat the face just like any other part of the painting, but the minute there's a face, people think they're going to discover the secret of the painting when they look at it. So it's kind of hard, and that's, I think, why sometimes I do almost very semi-cartoonish almost. There was another source, which was these late 19th century erotic etchings, where there's either a male or female lying on a bed, and again there's all this kind of fantasy going on above them. But the flying phallus came from Naples, and I just thought, what a cheerful thing to paint. I obviously didn't want the work to look old-fashioned, so it's a way of how do you engage with the past without looking retro yourself. I was very interested in how little do you need to give for the brain to fill in the rest. So some of them only had the tiniest splash of light blue and green, and it was so interesting because then people are immediately think it's a landscape. So it was kind of playing with that idea of letting the viewer's mind kind of fill in the gaps and not wanting to overstate something, but wanting to kind of suggest something and hope that the viewer brain kind of automatically fills things in. And it's also a moment when I realized the figures can actually get as abstract as you want if you put them somewhere specific. So then this led to some much more specific skies and grass and trees. At the time, I'd like to think of them as seeing something from high speed from the window of a train, for example. Like I grew up in suburban England, very pretty, and the idea, you know, taking the train and there's these beautiful hills and things, and then suddenly you're like, what? And there was something that you saw, but so fast that you didn't know what it was, but that it just gave you the ick. Photographs, but nearly always draw from outside sources rather than invent. And then in the paintings, I would always invent. The girl on a swing, she's kind of made up, although I've seen Goya's girl on a swing in Prado, and obviously there's Fragonard's girl on a swing. Those early Goyas, I love that feeling of the sort of sinister yet playful things. There are these Goyas of a clown being tossed up. In a way, I feel like I watch myself shedding these taboos as I go through, because when I leave art school, I'm so uptight. So many rules of things you're not allowed to do. Narrative is a huge one. It's so forbidden. It's almost the worst thing you can allow, and I feel like it's almost my last taboo. I wanted to do figures in a painting, but I never wanted to just do a figure sitting. I wanted them to be always doing something, especially if they were female. I didn't want the person just to be sitting there for your gaze. So I always made them be doing something. I was very uncomfortable just doing a picture of a woman just sitting there to be looked at. So it doesn't really matter what they're doing as long as they're doing something. Isn't it funny? You can look at paintings of the most horrific things that you'd never look at in real life. Because we were talking about the content of the exhibition when we're putting it together in the education department, and is it okay for a child to see this? And then we're laughing, just thinking any museum, you'll see beheadings, you'll see, rape, you see everything, the worst things that humans can throw at each other. You can't control what the viewer sees or what the viewer takes away, but I would like them to experience, joy and absorption. And if they're artists, hopefully they'll go home and feel like painting themselves.